Hey, it's Chronologically Gaming, the only channel that's perpetually retro because we're playing every video game in order of release. Welcome to the Backlog, where we're going back to play the games that we missed or other people that watched the show said, hey, you forgot about such and such game, so now we're going to make sure there's no game left behind. Let's go see what's happening in 1974. The last game we were checking out was TV basketball in the arcade. Let's see what our next game is. Of course it's going to be in the arcade. There's so much happening in the arcade right now. Our next game is called Video Action. Let's check it out, starting with the advertisement flyer. This is released the beginning of June or the beginning of summer 1974, the 80th video game that we've seen so far and the 52nd video game that we've seen in the arcade. Video Action is basically electronic paddle games. Oh, thanks. It's basically saying it's basically Pong. You can see they have different models from this advertisement flyer, the model VA2, the model VAC. In fact, the way this is set up, it kind of looks like it's be something you play at home, but no, it is in the arcade. Whatever model you're playing, you can play tennis, hockey, soccer. I believe it has several different sports titles. You can see they even have cocktail table examples here. This one's by Universal Research Laboratories, the second time we've seen this company after Paddle Battle. They were the first people to rip off Pong. And here they go, trying to do something that is suitable for public entertainment, recreation rooms, lounges, hotels and motels, and medical dental waiting rooms. Wait a second. There was arcade games, or there used to be arcade games, in the waiting room at the dentist. Why didn't I ever have that? You can see that I have a few more advertisement flyers showing you the story or quality of this style of game. This is also published by Electra Games. It's the first time we've seen this company. It is yet another ball and paddle game, the 50th. 50 video games that are a ball and paddle style variant. This one is incorporating lots of different sports. Video Action is essentially the Pong variant with 3 game modes, tennis, soccer, and hockey. Each game can be played with 2 or 4 players. It was initially released in the arcades as the VA1 model. The game later received a dedicated console version, the VA2, which we're not going to be seeing all the dedicated consoles here on Chronologically Gaming. And then it also had additional dedicated consoles and coin box uses in the arcades for venues like we saw from before. So this is the second video game that we've seen so far that allows you to have game modes or game variations. The only other one we've seen has been Sports Center up to this point. It's another game that's controlled with paddles, meaning it's the 68th video game controlled with paddles and the 45th variant of Pong. 45 games that play like Pong. It was the 66th video game released in North America. Here's another advertisement flyer showing off the cocktail tables. Ooh, very nice. And with all 3 sports right there too. So you're able to switch between what mode you want. 2 and 4 players, a nice touch as well. It is another video game that does not have a microprocessor. So we're not going to be able to play this one unless we have a simulator. I don't have a simulator of this one. That's the only screenshot I could muster for Video Action. So we have to give this one a 0 or a non-rating on Chronologically Gaming and just picture what it would be like to play another Pong game. Let's see what the next game is. Our next release takes us in even crazier territory. This is Touch Me. Terrible name for a video game. I don't believe we saw this on the show before because this is kind of a stretch. Touch Me is technically not really a video game because there's no video involved. But because it has to do with Atari, that's why we're going to showcase it. This is the 81st game that we've seen on the show, and this is the 53rd we've seen in the arcade so far. This is the 9th video game we've seen by Atari thus far. Don't forget about Key Games. They're still pumping out games too, but created and published by Atari has been Pong, Space Race, Pong Doubles, Gotcha, Super Pong, Rebound, Quadra Pong, and Gran Trak 10. And this is a whole nother brand of whatever this kind of game this is. Look at the advertisement flyer. It already makes you think of this is something different or weird, like if it's even considered a video game. It's a mind-challenging sound patterns, coordinated sight and sound, small modern package, completely solid state electronics. Well, I hope so. That makes sense. You can see it says, Touch Me is a mind boggler, which means this is the very first puzzle video game that's having to do with memory. The very first video game, well, I shouldn't say video game. I should say game because it's not a video game. It's also the very first timed input game that we've seen so far, which means you have to input things at the right time. In other words, think of games that you don't have to do just basically the action press at a certain time. This is basically a Simon Says type game. There's the example of the arcade cabinet. You have to push the buttons in the same order as they light up. Each time that you do, the game will light up with another sequence with one or more buttons added. Probably sounds familiar. The game did not prove profitable as pinball machines and video games proved more attractive than just pressing a light up button. So you can see there's examples of the arcade cabinet. They have, colorful buttons. Tell me how to wait your turn. Just doesn't seem as appealing as everything else we've seen so far. I do have the manual for this, but oh gosh, do not touch that manual. That looks filthy. Does it tell us how to play and what the game is? Because it's basically pretty simple, right? Insert the coin, the lamp turns, wait for the lamp to turn off, and one of 4 buttons will flash along its own selected audio tone. So it does have music, sort of, sounds, I should say. The wait lamp will go off, and your turn lamp will light, and you have approximately 10 seconds to push the button which had previously flashed. Yeah, that sounds really familiar, like we've seen this before. I have some video footage of the actual arcade cabinet and what it would be like to play the game. So the controls are just 4 buttons that light up. In 1977, Milton Bradley is going to release a home version of this knockoff of Touch Me called Simon. So in the future, there'll be Simon. It's the biggest selling toy of Christmas in 1977. And so what does Atari do? In 1978, they release a handheld version of this arcade cabinet, Touch Me, with the hyphen in between. Since Simon was the biggest one, they tried to do the handheld, and it did not do as well, probably because Atari's home game was small and had closely spaced buttons. It wasn't as cool as Simon was. This is the second time we've seen a video game, I keep saying video game, but a game that's based on Simon Says. The Magnavox Odyssey has a game called Simon Says, but even still, this is so much like the Simon that everyone knows and loves. But guess what? Atari is here doing it right now. It's the second video game we've seen that is only buttons, or only incorporates buttons. The only other game we've seen was Computer Space that Atari did. Everything else has been joysticks or paddles. It is the 67th video game we've seen released in North America, and it is a single-player only game. The only other game we've seen so far has been Gran Trak 10 that has a single-player mode. Solitaire video games. It sounds a little strange, right? So this is another transistor logic game, so we cannot, obviously I'm not going to be able to play any of this. Touch Me is barely a video game. I'm just wanting to show everything that Atari's done, almost, not everything, but trying to incorporate what's happening right now with Atari. We're going to slowly transition away from no mechanical games whatsoever in the arcade. Everything will be video games. All right, after that, let's see our next game. All right, the sequel. This is Gran Trak 20. This is released at some time in July 1974. It's our 82nd video game we've seen so far on Chronologically Gaming. Let's take a look at the advertisement flyer. Oh man, I just love Atari's advertisements. So good. The new 2-player or single-player version of the greatest moneymaker ever. Fantastic sound effects, big car racing game. This is Atari's 10th video game that we've seen. Pong, Space Race, Pong Doubles, Gotcha, Super Pong, Quadra Pong, Gran Trak 10, Touch Me, and now this one. This one was also published by Key Games, and it's the 5th time we've seen that company, which is essentially all Atari. Key Games and Atari are kind of the same ones. This is also published by Namco Limited, or Nakamura Manufacturing Company. This is the very first time we've ever heard of Nakamura Manufacturing Company, or Namco, on the show. This is the first experience of Namco right here with Gran Trak 20. It is another arcade racing game, which is the only other one that's out there is Gran Trak 10. So this is double your pleasure. You have 2 players that can be tracking with this real action of being on the Grand Prix race course with dual action race. Watch out though, there's brake locking oil slicks in the middle of the track. Players get true race car feel and fantastic sound effects as they round the curves and shift to a higher gear while trying to outrun their opponent. This has 2 steering wheels. You get your own steering wheel, your own gas brake pedal, and your own 4-gear shifter. Monumental because it's the first time any games had that. Second time we've seen a video game that has a steering wheel and pedals, stuff like that. This is the 68th video game we've seen released in North America. There's the example of the screenshot of the game, but I can't find any other screenshots or footage of people playing this. That's how rare this system is. Gran Trak 10's everywhere, being the first, but Gran Trak 20, it's a little less so. Take a look at that arcade cabinet, though. Really amazing to see 2 driving wheels. You're driving next to one another and with pedals and gear shifters. That's awesome. So if I could rate this one, I would give this one a 5-star rating of all the video games you could play. There's another example of the arcade cabinet, GT20. That sounds so fun. So another video game that we're not able to play ourselves without a simulator, so got to give it a no rating. And we'll just continue to breeze through all these video games of 1974. What's our next release? Next, we're going to Japan to check out Attack U.F.O, released at some time in August 1974. This is another interesting and very rare one. Here's the advertisement flyer for Attack U.F.O, the 83rd video game we've seen thus far and the 55th in the arcade. This is by Taito, the 6th time we've seen this company. I'm sorry, the 8th time we've seen this company after Pong, Astro Race, Davis Cup, Pro Hockey, Soccer, Basketball, and TV Basketball. That was picked up by Midway. Oh, look at that. Now, this one's using a totally different concept and design. It is not Pong style game. Take a look at the control panel, or the way that this is controlled. You're not using paddles either. This is the 2nd time we've seen a video game that is a arcade shooting gallery video game. The only other game we've seen that's trying this is Submarine Odyssey on the Magnavox Odyssey. This kind of game, a shooting gallery game, is what eventually is going to morph into Space Invaders, and then we have all those shooters that show up. But this one does something a little different. It's a shooting game where the players have to try to shoot down a UFO using guided missiles fired from the bottom of the screen, which are controlled by the joysticks. So essentially, it's just a missile that goes up, and your joystick's controlling it so you can hit the UFO. This one is a multiplayer competitive. You're playing at the same time against the other player, or you can play single player if you want to. It's the very first time we played a video game that has a guided missile gameplay mechanic. And it's the 8th video game we've seen that's using digital joysticks. Another thing to note is it's using a very sci-fi theme for a video game. This is the 7th video game we've seen so far that has a sci-fi theme, and we are just getting started. There are so many video games with a sci-fi theme, it blows up. There's just way too many. So this is the humble beginnings of that too. This is the 12th video game that we've seen released in Japan so far. Imagine a world. There's only 12 video games in Japan. This is 1974. Another one that we can't play ourselves without a simulator, and I can't even find video footage of someone else playing this one. So we have to give this one a no rating for Attack U.F.O and press forward with this amazing quest to play and see every single video game. Our next game is also in Japan. Let's check out Balloon Gun. This is by Sega. I love Sega. Let's take a look at the advertisement flyer for Sega Balloon Gun, the 84th video game we've seen so far on Chronologically Gaming, released at some time in August 1974, and the 56th video game we've seen in the arcade so far. This is the 5th time we've seen anything by Sega, or 5th game we've seen. They did Pongtron, they did Hockey TV, Pongtron 2, and Clean Sweep. This is the next latest venture. It is a light gun shooting gallery video game, the 6th that we've seen so far. But this one's a little special. We saw 4 light gun video games on the Magnavox Odyssey, and we also saw, bending the rules a little bit, Nintendo's laser clay shooting system. So this one is involving 1 or 2 players using light guns to hit various moving balloons displayed on the monitor. Each player is given a limited ammo of 60 shots. In single player mode, the game ends when that number has been fired. In 2-player mode, the first one to use all 60 shots terminates the game for both players, and the one with the highest score is determined the winner. The balloons initially appear slowly, allowing more time for careful aim, but as the game progresses, the balloons are released at a faster rate, making it more difficult to score. Balloon Gun is the light gun game for 1 or 2 players where they shoot balloons sitting with a tree background, and it has like a tree overlay. 3 different speed variations for the balloons. The number of bullets are indicated by lines on either side of the screen, and the game ends when the allotted number of bullets run out. So this one is a cooperative multiplayer video game. There was another video game that we saw that allowed this kind of cooperative play. At least I should say cooperative video games really aren't a thing right now. There's only one other game that's cooperative. It was Fun Zoo on the Magnavox Odyssey, where you're able to play with 2 people and work together. But again, on the Magnavox Odyssey, I'm stretching the word cooperative and video game just a little bit there. All right, but this one's pretty big because Sega's Balloon Gun is the very first 2-player cooperative light gun game. You are working together and shooting together on the screen. That's why this is so big. We flip it over the back. You can see they're giving us like a forest motif, explaining a little bit about the game itself. And there's, again, the arcade cabinet. A really terrible picture of the arcade marquee. And that's about it. That's all I have for Balloon Gun. This one is the very first time we've seen a video game that allows you to have difficulty options or difficulty modes. We've seen dip switches and so forth, but this one actually has several different ones you can pick from before you play the game. It is also the 30th video game we've played that has an overlay to assist the graphics, make it a little bit flashier. And it's the 13th video game we've seen from Japan so far. So right now, it's another game we cannot play ourselves because it's the 83rd video game that's using DTL or TTL logic. Still no microprocessors up to this point. All right, let's see what our next game is. Coming up next, it's Goal Kick. This is released again at some time in August 1974. Let's check out Goal Kick. Here's the advertisement flyer. Oh man, I love this style of arcade cabinets. That one actually looks even better than the last time we saw an arcade cabinet on pegs. But wow, that looks so cool. This is our 85th video game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming, the 57th we've seen in the arcade so far, and this is the 6th time we've seen Sega. Or at this point, you could still probably call it Service Games. They just transitioned from Service Games. They did Pongtron 1 and 2, Hockey TV, Clean Sweep, and then Balloon Gun. This is true to form. We're back to a ball and paddle game, the 51st ball and paddle video game so far. But the arcade cabinet is what's selling me. Goal Kick looks very, very different. Flip it over the back. It's kind of explaining a little bit how the game works. In Goal Kick, there's two players that rotate, taking offensive and defensive positions. The attacking side moves the board to catch the ball and presses the shoot button from the left and right favorite places to shoot. The defender defends the goal by moving the goalkeeper's board while being protected by a four-board defense that moves freely. The attacking side can attack as many times as possible, but if the ball is dropped, the opponent will score and the offensive-defensive positions will be changed. This one's in the vein of a theme of a soccer style or a European football theme. It's the 8th video game we've seen that's trying that. And this is the 69th video game that's controlled with paddles. It's once again Pong. It's the 46th variant of Pong we've seen so far, and the 14th game we've seen from Japan. I love the aesthetic of it, and I would love to play it, but sadly, we have no simulation and not even any video game footage of it. Got to give it a no rating and move on to our next game. Our next release is a monumental release, a game-changing release. This is Ping Pong, released at some time in October 1974. This is our 86th video game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming, the 58th we've seen in the arcade so far, and the 11th video game by Atari, who's also pumping out games by Key Games. They did Pong, Space Race, Pong Doubles, Gotcha, Super Pong, Rebound, Quadra Pong, Grand Track 10, Touch Me, Grand Track 20, and here we are with Ping Pong. This is the very first video game that is a pinball game. They're trying to make pinball a video game. I ask you why. There are exceptional pinball arcade systems right now in the arcade. So they're having to compete with the actual physical pinball. I have no idea how they did that. Inside of this is a patented motion circuit that's generating the ball. Let me show you the arcade cabinet. Targets are surrounded by zones that determine the direction the ball bounces in. A gravity algorithm forces the ball downward to give it the most realistic ball physics or effect you would want at this time in 1974. This is only controlled with buttons because it's meant to be like pinball, and it's the 3rd video game we've seen with just buttons after Touch Me and Computer Space. This is also, actually, we'll go into the game to talk to the rest of it. So it has a unique concept, a unique style, realistic video action. I want to see if they say anything about this. They don't say anything about the screen that's popping out there. There's the example of the arcade cabinet. It looks different, and it is supposed to be different. And it's supposed to feel a little bit like you're playing a pinball. It's Ping Pong, though. There's the arcade control panel, really simple, just the flippers on the sides, all you need. And another example of the arcade cabinet. Man, it looks really, really nice. All right, so I do have the manual, and we've already seen and showcased this on the show, but we need to play it. Let's play some Ping Pong, sometime in October 1974 by Atari. There we go. That's what I wanted to show off. The first thing you need to know is this is the very first video game with a vertical orientation. Start turning those TVs sideways because this is the first one to ever do it. And it already looks like pinball. It works really good. So way to go, Ping Pong. It is an official game in the Pong series, the 6th video game in the Pong series we've seen so far, and currently there's 46 variants of Pong out there, but this one is even more bizarre than Rebound. This one is way out there. All right, so let's put a coin in and play. And don't adjust your sound. I don't have any sound for this simulator. That ball just went right down the center. Let's do it again. Give me another one. What? I can't believe the luck of going. It's just going straight down. There we go. Go on that one. There it is. Wow. The way that it's moving around, I actually have no idea how it's doing that. It's more impressive than when we played Rebound, and I was already amazed with that. But this, to do these kinds of physics, that's crazy. Got a very mediocre score the first time. But notice that the flippers are instant. Like whenever you move the flipper, it just pops up from one position to the other. Very limited animation, but what's the most impressive is the ball. How the ball moves around is what would get you. I'd like to know if this was anything impressive because you were able to play real pinball at the time. Did this hold anyone's attention? Did they realize what was happening or what was required to make this happen? Because if most people or uneducated didn't realize what they're seeing, they might just go to real pinball because obviously this is not going to give you what some of the notice that it bounced up from the bottom. That was nice. Great hit detection. Keep it going. I'm getting a better score this time on the first ball. And I spoke too soon, of course. So this is the 69th video game that we've seen released in North America, and it is the second video game that allows 2 players to play, taking turns, what we call hot seat arcade multiplayer. The only other game that does this is Clean Sweep. So that's why whenever we're playing, you can see if I put enough coins in and did a 2-player mode, I'd be taking turns with another player. It's not only single player, but you're only playing one at a time. And this one is another DTL or TTL system that doesn't have a microprocessor. I'm playing this because we have a simulator through the DICE emulator, and it's the 85th video game that does not have a microprocessor that we've seen so far on the show. Every video game up to this point should be without a microprocessor. The only reason it doesn't match up is because we mixed in the laser clay shooting system by Nintendo. All right, so glad we got to check that one out. That's pretty cool. Of all the games you could play and video games you could play right now, I consider this one of the best. It's the beginning of video pinball. My only gripe would be at this time, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, how popular was pinball, real pinball, and did this even take away from the real pinball players? I wouldn't think so, but I'm still going to say 5 stars. Of all the games you could play, video games you could play right now in the arcade, Ping Pong is awesome. It is one of the best you could play. Let's see what our next game is. Oh, the next one is another monumental game. This is Speed Race. Let's check out Speed Race. All right, the advertisement flyer is flashy. It's beautiful. It is the 87th video game that we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. It's the beginning of November 1974 when we got Speed Race, the 59th game we've seen in the arcade so far, and because of this advertisement flyer, it's screaming Taito. It is again by Tomohiro Nishikado. This is the 9th time we've seen a video game by Taito. After Elapong, Astro Race, Davis Cup, Pro Hockey, Soccer, Basketball, TV Basketball, and Attack U.F.O, this got picked up from Japan and brought to other regions by Midway. So it's the 8th time we've seen Midway also on the show. I don't have the advertisement flyer, I believe, for Midway, but you flip over Speed Race, and it always says Speed Race Deluxe. More thrill, more action, more player appeal, more profit. And it shows you all the features on the left side. Tachometer, shift gear. It shows you how to play the game. Insert your coin, put the shift gear in low, press the accelerator pedal to speed up the player's car, change the shift to high for more speed, and control it with the accelerator and steering wheel, and you're supposed to just pass rival cars. As many as you can without crashing. I love this. This is another first of its kind, very rare kind of game, and I think that's all I have. Oh no, I do have some more. I got a different one, a slightly different advertisement flyer. The arcade cabinet has the wheel and the gear shifter and a pedal if you look down to the bottom right of it. Yeah, there we go. Just a slightly different one. This is not the deluxe one. So there's Speed Race, there's Speed Race Deluxe. There's also TT Speed Race, or the tabletop Speed Race. We call them Cocktail over in the United States. There's the example of another one where you have a chair to sit down instead of having to stand up and drive, which why not? It's like we should be sitting down and pretending we're in a car anyway, right? All right. Yeah, another example of the TT Speed Race version, or the tabletop one. And this is also known as Wheels, Wheels 2, and Racer. All of these games or variations of these games were started right here with Speed Race. Is that based on Speed Racer? You know, the anime from Japan? It wouldn't surprise me if it was. Oh, there you go. So Midway's release of Racer, advertisement flyer, and the 8th time we've seen Midway. Very nice. Essentially the same game. And then they also released Wheels, which again, very, very similar concept. And then we go Speed Race, Fuji Japan, another one. Look at that one. That wheel is enormous for that arcade cabinet. That's Allied Leisure Industries. Oh, the Australia advertisement flyer. Gotcha. Very cool. So we do have the manual for Speed Race, and we kind of know how it works. I don't think this, this is just going to be pretty much technical. Yeah, it explains the parts there. Yeah, we don't have to go anything with that one, but I do want to show some video game footage that I was able to find online. So Speed Race, or Racer, or Wheels, features sprites for cars and a top-down view. The player's car is controlled with a steering wheel attached to the arcade cabinet, an accelerator, and a gear shift. The player's speed shown on a separate speedometer rather than on screen. So remember, they're using the mechanical side for it. Most versions of the cabinet not shown in others. The racetrack scrolls and continues straight ahead, but features different widths. Either 1 or 2 players can alternate. Again, hot seat arcade multiplayer can race, gaining points for the cars overtaken. And there's 2 difficulty levels. So this one has lots of things that are going for it. First, it's the 3rd video game we've seen that actually has a distinguished automobile that you're playing as. Gran Trak 10 and Gran Trak 20 are the only other ones. It's the 2nd video game that is a portrait or tape mode, whatever, vertical screen after Ping Pong. And it's the 1st video game in the Speed Race series. But the biggest thing about this game, the most impressive thing about this game, is it's the very first video game that has scrolling. It's auto-scrolling. Every other video game we've seen so far has been fixed. Your game is played and fixed on one screen, except this. This is the first time. It is a hot seat multiplayer arcade game, the 3rd time we've seen it after Clean Sweep, Ping Pong, and the 15th video game we've seen from Japan. It is, if I could play it, I'd be giving it 5 stars. But we're not able to play this one. And we're going to be seeing games that are close to this or like this later. One of the first times we saw it was Monaco GP, which we'll be seeing in the arcades. One of the last transistor-to-transistor logic games, very much based on Speed Race, but it all started here, and we missed it originally. I'll have to give it a no rating, but put my hands on Speed Race, I'm giving it 5 stars for sure. We're going to see plenty of games that copy this. All right, let's see what our next game is. It's another big one. Next release is Tank. This is released in November 5th, 1974. Our 88th video game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming, and we've already seen and showcased this one before when we previously saw it. There's some of the stars of Atari with all these arcade cabinets. And there it is, Tank, the 60th video game we've seen in the arcades, originally by Steve Bristow and Lyle V. Rains. Way to go, Steve and Lyle. First time we've seen those developers. And this is originally by Key Games, the 6th time we've seen this company, which is essentially Atari. This one was picked up by Namco, the 2nd time we've seen Namco Limited after Gran Trak 20. So this one is mixing and doing something new that we haven't seen before as well. So you can see on the Atari advertisement flyer. Does it even say Atari? No, it doesn't. It's Key Games, but it does say Atari on the left side. Yeah, Atari or Key Games, after it was picked up later, but they do a great job with the marketing. You can see the cocktail cabinet and the dual joysticks, which is brand new. There you go. There's an example of the upright system. I believe that's the Key Games model. Love the marquee on the outside. Yeah, there we go. That's it. Love that. Wood grain arcade cabinet. And there it is, the 2 dual joysticks to make it feel like you're controlling a tank. There's the arcade marquee for Tank with an example of the screenshot. So we've already seen this one on the show, and we've already played this one on the show, but just so you can see a little bit of more game footage. It's a 2-player game, Tank is. It is an arcade maze game, the 3rd one we've seen so far, but it's the very first vehicular combat video game. Each player controls a tank, and their goal is to destroy each other. However, it's difficult because you're located in a block maze on top of a minefield. All the mines that you see over here are the X's. Players move toward each other using 2 joysticks each and shoot each other with a fire button on top of their right joystick. This one is another video game I like to call a dual shooter, the 4th dual shooter that we've seen so far after Galaxy Game, Computer Space, and Star Trek, which essentially was a ripped-off Computer Space. It's the very first video game using the dual vertical joysticks to give you the feel of controlling the treads of a tank. It's the very first in the series of tank games and tank clones and tank variants. It's the very first war-themed video game. It's the very first time you're controlling a tank in a video game. There's so many firsts. It's also the 7th video game that's using relative controls, which means that when you're playing the game, depending on where your tank is facing, you have to remember to use those controls. It is another video game, the 87th, that uses a DTL or TTL. Still no microprocessor on this one. It is only competitive multiplayer. You have to have someone else to play with you.
Hey everybody, thanks for checking out.
Whoops. So that means this is the 70th video game we've seen released in North America, and I'm still holding that this is a 4-star video game. Excellent. If I play it a little bit longer, I'm sure I would give it a 5-star game for all the games you could play up to this point. All right, let's see what our next release is. Next one is another really bizarre one. This one is Qwak. Qwak. Released at some time in November 1974, the 89th video game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming thus far, and the 61st we've seen in the arcade up to this point. Here's the advertisement flyer for Qwak. This is, again, by Atari, the 12th video game by them. They've done Pong, Space Race, Pong Doubles, Gotcha, Super Pong, Rebound, Quadra Pong, Gran Trak 10, Touch Me, Gran Trak 20, Pin Pong, and now Qwak. This one is another light gun shooting gallery game, the 7th we've seen so far on Chronologically Gaming, and it is the 3rd video game involving hunting after Prehistoric Safari on the Magnavox Odyssey and the laser clay shooting system we saw by Nintendo. In this game, well, actually, I'll explain a little bit as we see the arcade cabinet. We get a rifle with the arcade cabinet, and you can kind of see how the graphics have an overlay over the top as well. There's the arcade. I don't want to call it a PCB, but there's the board, and there's the arcade marquee, or there's the arcade marquee for it, and then we have just a little bit. I think I have the manual for Qwak, and whenever I first got this, I thought there's another game that's released way later. Yeah, this one's just a schematic, not helpful. All right, so here we go. This is a little bit of gameplay footage of Qwak, or what Qwak is like. In this game, ducks are going to fly one at a time across the screen, and the player shoots them using a light gun attached to the cabinet. The player gets 3 shots per duck. Ducks change direction away from missed shots and fall to the bottom of the screen when hit. And there's a screen overlay of the grass that adds images of reeds and trees, and an image of a duck is added to show the row at the top of the screen whenever a duck is hit. Games continue with a time limit set by the machine operator. So it has birds, it has ducks, it has a graphic overlay, which is the 31st video game we've seen that has that. It is single player only. You only are playing by yourself for this one. The 3rd video game we've seen after Gran Trak 10 and Touch Me. It is the 71st video game released in North America, and it is it is another video game without a microprocessor. The 88th video game that's running DTL or TTL. So I got to give this one a no rating for Qwak. But it is light gun shooting, and it's with real rifles, so I would love to play. All right, let's see what our next game is. Coming up next, we're going to a whole different world. This is World Cup Football, released at some time in the beginning of December 1974. Let's take a look at the advertising flyer. You can see we're in a different place than we usually are. This one is coming to us from Europe. The 4th video game we've seen originating from Europe. Everything else up to this point has been releasing in North America or Japan, video games at least. This is the 90th video game we've seen so far, and the 62nd we've seen in the arcade. It's the 13th video game by Atari, who's also releasing games with Key Games. Pong, Space Race, Pong Doubles, Gotcha, Super Pong, Rebound, Quadra Pong, Gran Trak 10, Touch Me, Gran Trak 20, Pin Pong, and Qwak. And now, World Cup. This one is the 52nd ball and paddle video game we've seen, and it's another Pong-like game. It's using the soccer or European football theme. The 9th video game that's doing that. This is a Pong variant for 1, 2, or 4 players with the soccer theme. Each team has a number of players. 2 forwards placed in the opposing team's half, 2 defenders, and a goalkeeper. The attackers and goalkeeper can stop the ball and kick it again. It is the 70th video game we've seen controlled with paddles. And it is the 47th Pong variant. 47 games so far that play like Pong, and we're only in 1974. This one is multiplayer, competitive options. It has team options to play and single player options to play. This is the 23rd 4-player compatible video game we've seen so far. Invasion and Win on the Magnavox Odyssey have been the only 4-player games that are hot seat. Everything else you're all playing at the same time. So this one is, like you can see, it's in another language because it was, I think the German one was the only one I could find. Yeah, that's all I have for this one, but it is released in other parts of Europe. And it is the 89th video game we played that uses transistor to transistor logic, so I got to give this one a no rating of all the games we've seen up to this point. All right, that was a lot of arcade. I think it was arcade the whole evening. That is where we got to put the video game playing on pause or running out of quarters in the arcades in 1974. Next time on the Chronologically Gaming Backlog, we showcase all the games released at some time in 1974, including baseball, flim flam, table tennis, paddle derby, and Smash. I'll let you guess which ones are just Pong. That's it for today, and like I always say, video games are the future.
Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the channel and joining me on my quest to play every single video game in order of release. We'll be streaming live every weekday at 9 p.m. Central, so join us and let us know if we missed any games along the way. This video would not be possible without Launchbox, RetroArch, and MAME. Tell all your friends there's some crazy guy named Chronologically Gaming trying to play every single video game. We have links down below that'll send you to places like our Discord and Patreon, and one that says all the video games we've ever played. If you go there, it's a list of everything, and you can click right to the game you want to see. Chronologically Gaming is the name to look for. We are perpetually retro, and we will catch you next time.